Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another review. Sorry about that. After 9 as I record this. Today I'm reviewing a film I just finished watching a couple hours ago. It's a film that, when I first saw the trailers, I'm like, this film looks like it could be interesting. Grew up watching the film that this is a reimagining of a couple times, which by the time this is up I've already reviewed that film on here, Sleeping Beauty. And the trailer made me, drew me in a little bit. And this is not the first time Disney has done something like this. They did it a couple years ago with Alice in Wonderland, which I'll say right off the bat, just from a first time viewing perspective, I like this film a little bit more than I liked Alice in Wonderland, but hey, maybe I'll follow this up with a revisit of the other two Alice in Wonderland films, if I have time. But anyway, the film of course is Maleficent, which stars Angelina Jolie as our title character. Now the film is getting a small following. It has a 7.4 on IMDb, though I expect that rating's probably going to drop in a little bit because the scores are usually very high at first, and they sort of go down a little bit. The Rotten Tomatoes score is a 76 with the audience and a 51 with the critics, which that really doesn't surprise me. This does seem like a film that the critics are gonna not enjoy as much as the fans do, which I'm in a little bit of a quandary with this, if that's the right word. As you guys, if you've already watched my review of Sleeping Beauty, know, I had a main problem with the leads in that, and I didn't really enjoy it as much as I did as a kid. With this film, I can honestly say, at least just from watching it back to back, I enjoyed this film a little bit more than I did Sleeping Beauty, and that has a higher critical mark. Makes me wonder if some of that reaction is maybe some nostalgia stuff, or just going with the time. If it's the time, I can understand a little bit, but if it's because we've had films like this made already that it's getting to 51, that just makes me sad, because you guys know, I've said it a couple times before, to me it doesn't matter if a film like this has been done already. If the film is still good, it can still draw you in, I'm fine with it, and if it adds something new, that's a bonus. But 51 I think is a little too low critically, but it's one I'm like, okay, I can see. Here's the consensus. Angelina Jolie's magnetic performance outshines Maleficent's dazzling special effects. Unfortunately, the movie around them fails to justify all that impressive effort. I respectfully disagree with that, because the film around it drew in. It's just the film concentrates more on Maleficent and her relationship with the characters around her. That was really the point of the film. When you see the film is called Maleficent, it's going to be all about Maleficent. I mean, that's why I think this film is a little bit better than Sleeping Beauty, because with Sleeping Beauty, it's called Sleeping Beauty, so she's the title character. She should at least be interesting. In that one, both her and Philippe, as I mentioned in that review, they were flat. I was more interested in the villain and some of the side characters, and the only reason I rooted for good to prevail is because it's the archetype. You want good to prevail, especially with how dastardly a villain Maleficent was in the original one. In this one, she's not really a villain, which I will get to in a little bit. Now, the film was directed by Robert Stromberg, and this is his directorial debut. And I have to say, for his first-time director, he did a magnificent job. I'll applaud. I look forward to seeing what this guy can do in the future. But even though this is his directorial debut, this is not time working on film, but it was paid quickly, so it slows down a little bit. He has several credits. He worked with James Cameron on Avatar, he worked with Tim Burton on Alice in Wonderland, and he also worked with Sam Raimi on All Is the Great and Powerful. Apparently on those, he was the art direction. He was in the art direction on the first two, and he won for him, so that explains the great look of this film. And that's what I like. I like it when directors start as an actor first.
They start as an art director. Whatever they usually start as, though, that's what really usually looks good when they become a director. Like, he's an art director. Was an art director, the film looks very great. Clint Eastwood was an actor first, so he usually really does get good actors and good performances out of his dramas. Now with this, just to say that he's an art director does not mean that there's not good acting, but I'll say the best actor in the whole film is Angelina Jolie, or at least she's the one with the most captivating performance. But then again, she has most screen time, so obviously that's going to happen. Now, the film is 97 minutes, which, if I remember right, is only a little bit longer than the original film, but it takes a different approach. This is a film where the term reimagining would fit more than, let's say, remake or reboot, because it takes the concept of the original Sleeping Beauty film and turns it entirely on its head.
Now, one thing it does really fix it is like a minor complaint that I had about the original is like the original one never gave an explanation for why Maleficent hates the king, other than the fact she's evil, he's good, so they probably have had some conflicts in the past, and she's just using not being invited as a justification for going there. This one does, but I'll get to that in a second. The plot of the film is that it's told narration by narration that pops up every once in a while, where an elderly woman is telling the story of Maleficent, who was a powerful fairy who lived in the moors, which is a magical realm bordering a human kingdom. As a young girl, she met and fell in love with a human peasant named Stefan, who is infatuated with her as well, but it's overshadowed by his ambition to become king one day. As they grow older, the two drift apart until one day Stefan stops coming to see her entirely. Now, one day Maleficent defeats a king in battle who had been coming to attack the Moors, and the king is basically on his deathbed, and he says whoever can kill Maleficent for him will be his successor. Stefan is a member of the court at this part. It looks like he's just like a servant boy, it's hard to tell. He's just in the room. He goes and sneaks up on Maleficent. At first he wants to kill her, but then he hesitates because of the past relationship. So instead he cuts off her wings. And of course when she wakes up she realizes Stefan did this and feels heartbroken and betrayed. And of course she eventually finds out through her raven, Deval, that he took her wings and used them to become king, and this really makes her mad. And from then on, she has revenge on her mind, so when Stefan, now the king, and his queen have a daughter Aurora and are having a christening, she shows up and, does the whole curse thing. But unlike the original where the curse is, she'll die when she touches the spinning needle, it's like you see in the trailer, that she'll fall into a sleep like death. But to add a little bit more insult to injury to this, she says that the only way that the curse can be broken is by true love's first kiss. So they changed that part from the fairies to her, which I thought was nice, especially with how the story is there. Now the reason that that's thrown in, and this is a minor spoiler, is that as it's doing the grow up flashbacks, we see that they actually did kiss during their relationship. It was on Maleficent's 16th birthday, and Stefan told her it was true love's first kiss. So a little bit of that in there. So now, like in the original, Stefan has all the spinning wheels destroyed and he sends his daughter off to be with the fairies. But the difference is, unlike the original where Maleficent spends the entire 16 years trying to find Aurora, she knows from the beginning where Aurora is and is slowly watching over her. And occasionally she helps her, like she prevents Aurora from falling over a cliff, she feeds her at first. At first, of course, it's like, I don't want her to die before she reaches 16 and she falls into sleep like death. But as time goes on, you could tell she's beginning to genuinely care for Aurora. And this is what I like how they did with Maleficent. They took her from being the mistress of all evil, or should I say self-proclaimed mistress of all evil, to being kind of a tragic villainess. I wouldn't say not on the same level as Darth Vader where he becomes super evil, but he has some of that where they're taken by their darkness, but you can tell there's still a little bit of good in them. But with Maleficent in this film, it's a lot more obvious, whereas in Vader, he basically had his heart basically was a rock wall and there was just a little bit of light in it. Now some people might be turned off by that, but I'm not. It's kind of what I expected when I saw the trailer, but they're going to go the tragic route. And I would actually like that they did that. Makes this version of Maleficent interesting. I still like the dark villainous one, but if you're going to expand, make her the focal point of the story, and try to make the character a little different, you go with that, and it really adds with the drama of the film. And it doesn't take away the fact we have a different Maleficent, it's just, we have the one that's just the main bad guy, and then we have the one that's a tragic one. And you really do understand her motivations when you see what happens to her. The person that she loved basically betrayed her, took her wings, and she wanted revenge, but as the film goes on, she starts to care for the child she was going to use for the revenge, which ties in a little bit into the ending, which I'll get to after a bit. Now, after the fairies, however, the film is similar yet different. Philippe comes into it, but he has nothing to do really with the climax except for one thing, which I'll get to in a bit. Stefan, he wants to get into a fight with Maleficent that he's preparing for, which, this is another minor spoiler I'm going to mention, but apparently fairies are hurt by iron, which I want to know where they came up with that. Is that actually from some European folklore? Because I never remember hearing that fairies were hurt by iron. Maybe they're going based off the same principle, like werewolves and vampires are hurt by silver, so fairies hurt by iron. Makes sense to me, at least. So that goes into the climax, and Stefan, the actor that plays him, a couple of us are going to recognize, because it's Sholto Copley, who was in District 9, which he's probably the second best actor in the movie, and he really plays King Stefan convincingly. You can tell that the guy has ambition. He loves his daughter, so he's sending her away, but his little conflict with Maleficent is slowly eating at him, and as the 16 years go on, whenever we see the character, you can see that conflict he has with Maleficent is eating him up, and he's going to do anything he can to save his daughter and also get rid of Maleficent. It's driving him insane, which I think that's a very interesting take, especially considering the first film he's just a king. He has a little bit of a relationship with the other king, and he really loves his daughter and all that, but not really much of a character. I mean, the characters that are fleshed out the most in the original were Maleficent, even though most of her backstory and motivation were not talked about, and the other three fairies, which the three fairies are here. They have different names. They're Knotgrass, Nissawilt, and Flitty, if I'm pronouncing that right. But some of their personality traits are there. They still have the fight, but they don't really have the same personalities as the original one, at least fully there. Maybe it's also a little different because they're actually actors this time, even though as little fairies they are CGI. And also the film is a little different, but it's still there and it's interesting. Philippe basically barely has anything to do other than the first sloth thing, which I think I've talked about all I will outside of the spoiler section. The film was made for 180 million. So far it's made 235, so it's made its budget back, but I don't know if that 180 counts with advertising. If it does, it's definitely gonna make money. As I mentioned, Robert did a good job directing. The special effects look great. There were a couple instances where I'm like, okay, I would not have used CGI there. Like one of them, like, okay, I understand why that was CGI, but that could have still been a practical. But I'll say at least the money on the effects, it's not crappy effects. The CGI does look pretty good. And there is some practical stuff in there, like they do have practical armor. It's not CGI armor like in the Wolverine, even though that's kind of understandable why it's CGI still, but still, I think you get my point. So I gotta have to watch it again, but it looked like there might have been some stuff that was half practical, half CGI. I know some of the stuff, like some of the troll-like creatures in the fairy moors, I would have preferred to see them do like as small practical stuff, but for the CGI stuff I thought it was okay. Acting wise, Jolie is the best in the film. She really does play Maleficent convincingly, both the dark aspect of her as we see in the curse scene, and then the newer aspect, the more, for lack of a better word, human part of her character. I've already mentioned Sholto, he does a great job as Stefan. Ellie Fanning, Dakota Fanning, her sister is Princess Aurora. I haven't seen much of her work, but I thought she was serviceable as Aurora. She really does play off the naive character. I don't know if she was. I know some of the actors are cast because of their resemblance to the cartoon versions. Makes me wonder if they were cast because how her current skills make her seem naive in certain roles, or because she could play a naive type character well. The scene we see in the trailer where she actually finds out that Maleficent is Maleficent, she does play convincingly, but probably could have been a little bit more emotional, but for what she had to do, she was fine. Sam Riley as Duval the Raven when he's in human form, he does an okay job. The three fairies, I'm only familiar with one of them, at least their work. I thought they did a good job, they worked off each other well. Brenton, I can't pronounce his last name, it's Thwaites as Philippe. For what little he's in the film, he's okay, but basically about as memorable, at least to me, as Philippe in the original film. And then the actors that played the past king and his daughter, they're fine, but nothing to run home about. Now, of course, my rating for the film is 4 out of 5, and those of you know the drill by now, it's time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, for the spoiler section. Now, of course, at one point in the film, when Maleficent and Aurora finally do talk, Aurora believes Maleficent is her fairy godmother because she knows she's been around her whole life. and it's at this point, is from this point on, they hang out with each other for a while, and you really see that Maleficent is really caring for Aurora because of the fact she has a past relationship with Stefan. It's not said, but you can kind of infer from how she's acting that she's seeing Aurora kind of as the daughter she never had, kind of like a stepmother, or you could say godmother type way, which, as the film is going on, you can kind of see where they're going to go into with the ending, because in the end Aurora does get her finger poked, and of course true love's kiss is not from Philippe, but it's from Maleficent after apologizing, the goodnight kiss to the forehead and then waking her up, which some people will be like, yeah, come on, but I think it fit. Like with Frozen, I do like that Disney is going away from true love always having to be romantic, because there can be love you could call true love that's between family members or between friends, or in this case it'd be like a godmother one, so motherly love. So it works to me. It just shows that it could be as powerful as romantic love, because that's the thing that I'm going to use Disney as an example because they usually seem to be the ones most guilty of this. The whole romantic true love thing has been overplayed a lot, and I'm glad that at least that with this one and with Frozen, Disney took a chance and said that it's not the only love that can end up saving the day. With Frozen, it was the love between siblings, and in this one, it's the love between a mother figure and a daughter figure. And of course, with it, they actually did make fun of the whole love at first sight thing. That was more the fairies, but the way the dialogue was, I couldn't help but chuckle at it. We gotta get another prince in here. That's not what they said, but that's kind of the gist of what they said. And then the whole final fight with Stefan in the iron armor, that's a good scene, and it's not Maleficent that turns into the dragon. Now, as I said already, some people might have a little bit of a problem with Maleficent not being the villain, but as I said, it doesn't bother me. I think it's an interesting reimagining of the character. Because the original film is an adaptation of the story, and a couple of the stories straight away. So Maleficent has to be this archetypical villain, but if you're going to use her as the main focus of a film, turning her into a tragic villain works, and the way they did this, it works, and it has a happy ending. And of course in the end Maleficent gets back her wings. I know another spoiler, but this is still up, but it adds to a nice little final thing at the end. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those of you who probably skipped ahead, yep. Now, like I said, 4 out of 5 stars is my rating. One thing I haven't touched on yet, I forgot, is that the score was great. I was wondering who the score was by as I was listening to it. I'm like, this is a pretty good score. I probably will get this score. It was James Newton Howard. He always does amazing scores. Even if the film around it is not as good, like Airbender, his scores are always amazing. And he did a great job. I'm probably going to have to listen to the score individually, but it was great. And I like this little touch in the trailers. They actually did a cover of Once Upon a Dream from the original film, and it was sung by Lana Del Rey, which I'm not familiar with her work that much, but I just know the name, and I thought she did it good. It sounded good. It wasn't very poppy, at least the part I heard. And apparently she was handpicked by Angelina Jolie to perform the song, so good with that. Now, if there's any other thing I have to say is that if Disney wants to do more reimaginings of some of their past animated films, especially their older ones where the story, if it had been made, since the Renaissance, Disney Renaissance and forward, would have had to have been more developed, I'd be all for it. I just can't think of any off the top of my head. I mean, they did this one, which is Sleeping Beauty. Technically, you can argue that Burton's Alice in Wonderland is a reimagining of their Alice in Wonderland, but it's more of a sequel to the books. Maybe a reimagining of Sleeping Beauty would be interesting, but kind of, I know they did the dark one was made in the 90s. It'd be kind of hard to figure out how Disney would do a reimagining of that film. I don't think the first film should be touched. Pinocchio, I think they already did that. I'll see off the top of my head, I can't think. Hold on, let me look. Yeah, I'm looking up Disney animated films. I know this has got a little bit of a lag to this part of the video, but anyone will probably be alright. Like, here's the Bambi, no. A lot of these are Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Like, maybe doing the Ichabod part would be interesting. Cinderella. That would be one that'd be interesting for them to do a reimagining of. Though I think they've done it. There's been some reimaginings of it already, so I think Disney doing it would probably be a waste of time. Peter Pan, there's already been one about a decade ago, but it'd be interesting to see Disney try to do a live action reimagining of that. But then again, the only way you could really do a reimagining of that is if you did the film from Hook's perspective, which would be very weird. Because it's kind of hard to picture that guy try do it. Let's see, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians have already done. A live action version of them doing Sword in the Stone would be very interesting. Jungle Book they've already done. Robin Hood, you don't really need another one. The Black Cauldron, that would be even though I haven't seen another way, that would be interesting to see them try to redo that. And now I'm on the Disney Renaissance stuff. Little Mermaid would be interesting if they tried to. I think for that it'd probably be better for them to at least explore Ursula, because Ursula I don't think it'd work to make her a tragic character. It'd be interesting to see her backstory. That's about it. Beauty and the Beast, that's what I'd love to see them do a live action version of. Adapt the play and add more of the songs, like Beast song. Aladdin, Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm getting into the more modern stuff. It'd be kind of hard to do reinterpretations of a lot of the more modern stuff, and I don't think a lot of people would want to watch ones that are not that old. Yeah, I think I've gotten through. That's about it. The only other one yes, looks like Snow White, Ichabod, and Cinderella are about it. And maybe Sword in the Stone, not that many, so that's probably why they haven't done a lot of them. It'd be interesting to see some of them done, at least with the Disney touch, in a different direction. Of course, live action, you could risk the PG-13 rating, because I'm not gonna guess. I think Maleficent is PG, but if you could go with a PG-13 rating with some of them. I mean, they did it with their movies based off of an amusement park ride, so why not a reimagining of one of their older films? If you need it, you can use it. Anyway, as I've said a couple times already, 4 out of 5. I recommend it if you are a fan of Sleeping Beauty. If you're not really a fan of it, you could probably skip it, unless you're curious. If you're not that big of a fan of Disney films, I could say skip it unless you only like their live action films. If you were a fan of their films when you were a kid and you like Sleeping Beauty, I'd say give it a watch. If you're a Jolie fan, definitely, because her performance is really one to watch.